so excited to welcome you today because we have a very special guest expert on, my friend Laura Lee Wood. She is an executive relationship coach. She is an executive matchmaker, and she's the founder of the Nashville Wing Woman. And she's got a pretty amazing story. And the thing that I love about Laura is the fact that she is a coach for men. She's coached women as well, but for men. And that is something that I think is such a powerful thing. And I would love to hear your story. I could share your story, but you would tell it so much better.
Sure. Thank you, Kimberly. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on the show and meeting your lovely ladies. I've heard such good things. So my story, I practiced law for a decade. I was in the criminal prosecution realm the last 4 years, and I was ready for something more from life. And I was a single parent at the time. I'd been divorced a couple of years. And so I launched a coaching company the first year working predominantly with women, and then began working more with men. I launched the second branch of my company last summer, working predominantly with men through Nashville Wing Woman. And so now I do have female clients, but predominantly I'm marketing, and my time is spent working with men on how to date in a radically different way. When clients come to me, my big question is, are you relationship ready? Do you deeply desire to find love? And are you willing to try something totally different?
Yeah, I mean, that's powerful. What I love about how you coach and what you teach is that you teach traditional courtship. So tell me a little bit more about what traditional courtship looks like in our modern era.
Yes, it doesn't look anything like the modern rules of dating. So I tell my clients to throw out whatever your guy friends tell you. We're going to do this totally different. The big thing I talk about with my clients, male and female, is really focusing on having real dates. That's what sets you apart from the other 20 men in her Bumble profile, right? It's the fact that you're scheduling a date, you're planning a date, you're taking time to make dinner reservations or buy tickets or buy a bottle of wine and plan a picnic, whatever it is, that shows respect to a woman. And here's what's happening. I notice this a lot when I worked with women, and now that I work with men, I completely understand. Women were saying they're attracting all the wrong guys. They don't really have a dating life. There's a lot of just meeting up, having a drink, having coffee, meeting with friends. It's so casual. And I said, well, are you available for that? Because in my own life, when I told myself I'm ready to call in the love of my life and I don't want to be going to coffee and happy hour, I really want to take time to get to know someone. And I want them to respect me in the same way I respect them. Dating really shifted for me, and my experiences shifted. And so traditional courtship set you apart because you're not playing by the so-called modern rules of dating, and you're doing things differently, taking things at a slower pace sometimes, really getting to know someone before you're in a relationship, before you even really got to know someone.
Yeah.
So it's sort of taking those first few steps that people often skip and just sort of fall into a relationship, or most commonly fall into the gray zone.
You mean the friend zone?
That too, yes. Yep. They're often confused, but
the friends with benefit zone.
Men wonder where they are, how they got there, and women ask the same thing. And oftentimes I see sort of an emotional outpacing.
Yeah.
When there's, physical intimacy. So I really talk to my male clients about, look, if this is a woman that you think you can fall in love with and create a life with, let's be really responsible here with the decisions you make in the physical intimacy realm.
So on that topic of physical intimacy, when is an appropriate time? Like if you're talking traditional courtships and you're not just doing Netflix and chill, what does that look like? When is there an appropriate time frame? What signals should a woman look for? Because women are desirous just like men. We all crave some physical intimacy, but when is it a strong choice?
Sure. So I think that the heart of the matter is it is a choice. And so I think so many women, I've heard them say, well, things just sort of moved at a really fast pace and I wasn't really comfortable, but I was afraid he wouldn't like me. Here's the thing, ladies. If you value yourself and your self-worth and have respect for yourself, you're going to command that from a man in a very queenly way. And I think the biggest thing for women is really understanding where are you investing and how quickly are you investing? And if
Mm-hmm.
emotional intimacy is how you invest, you can pace that. If physical intimacy is how, then that also sort of quadruples your emotional investment in the relationship overnight, literally and figuratively. Then maybe you need to sort of take a step back. Like, have you had an exclusivity talk? How long have you known this person? The big thing for me, and I really talk to my clients about this, do you trust this person enough to engage with them in a physical way, that you feel like you would feel okay regardless of the outcome, whether you heard from him or you didn't again, because that's always the big question.
Yeah.
And I think 9 times out of 10, if a woman makes a decision to wait and to really get to know a man, he can either stop calling and stop taking her out on dates, or he can respect those boundaries with her. And those are boundaries she gets to set. The women have power in this situation. There's a reason I recommend the first 3 or 4 dates to be in a public place, and for you to park or take your own Uber, so that you're not dropping anybody off at a doorstep. There's no extra pressure. It's really, you're just there to engage with the date. It's not like there's an end game, literally, figuratively, in the back of anyone's mind.
Yeah.
You're just going to enjoy your time together. And I think 3 or 4 dates, depending on how often they are, for a lot of people, it's like once a week. So that's a month in. If you're communicating regularly and you're going on dates, you're going to really have a good sense of, are we going anywhere? What's the level of attraction? What's the desire level? And do I trust him at this point? And are there more questions you need to ask?
Like what? What are the questions?
I think personal safety is always a good one. Health is always a good one. Yes.
Personal safety. It's nice to feel safe on a date.
Yes. I think questions like, previous relationships, it's important to know. I encourage my clients, if you're looking for a lifelong love, it's okay to tell a man that. Now, some people would disagree. Don't say that on a first date. But I think that, if you are relationship ready and that's what you deeply desire, then you're going to want to share that probably the first couple of dates, because you don't want someone getting the idea you casually dating, because as women, we're investing all the time. And so all the time, meaning emotionally, we're just growing closer and closer and closer. And if they're not on pace or track with us, then that can feel really out of sync, and you stop and wonder, how did that happen? Right. So if you're learning more about him and you're beginning to trust him more, intuitively, you'll be guided to a better place that has a lot less pressure and a lot more love.
So when you're approaching a first date, in the sense of being courted, like with women, I think a lot of times in our day and era, we are not accepting being courted. And I think that also there has to be the ability to receive is very powerful, and not settle to, especially as strong, powerful women, and not to say, oh, I can just cook for us, or I can pay, or I can split the bill. Like, how do you coach your female clients on how to receive the courtship that a man will provide, and how to demand that of the man?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I tell my female clients to put it in their profile that they're only available or they're looking for real dates, because that will trigger in a man to say, hey, what do you consider a real date? And if he's genuinely interested in you, a man is going to be excited to take you out on a date. He's going to be excited to get to spend time with you. And men ask this question all the time. Well, do I have to spend $200 on dinner? No. But if you're asking the right questions, you're getting to know her. You can plan a date that she would really enjoy. You're going to enjoy your time getting to know her. And it can be the park or a hike, or it doesn't have to be a 2 or 3 hour fancy dinner. You can do other things on the date. I think women make a decision. I'm only available for real dates. And you put it out there. And if a man says, hey, I'd love to take you out for drinks sometime, maybe make a counter proposal. I'd love to get to know you better. How about we do, maybe drinks and appetizers? Or how about we meet for dinner one night? Just because it puts more skin in the game, not just financially for men, but for women, when we stand up for that real date, it also says, I'm not coming to meet you at your house, and I'm not coming to hang out with you and your buddies. I think we sort of settle for that, if that's even the right word. Sure, I'll swing by. Like, I really want to see him. But that's not a date.
Yeah.
So I think for you, getting really clear on what a date is, and then telling a man you want to expect a real date. I think the counter proposal is a very powerful way to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
Coffee. I don't really do a lot of coffee. I don't even drink coffee. You know, I'm available to come to the city one night, and I say if you want to plan a date. Because when you add that level of real courtship, you get some players in there who are ready for love, and you sort of can shake out a whole lot of those who are true players and just want to have some time with you and aren't interested in a relationship.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I loved is the fact that you encourage women to say what they want. And that was something that in my own personal experience with my husband, the night I met him, I was the most honest I'd ever been about exactly what I wanted with whom I wanted, and was very honest about it. And I think there's a difference when you approach a relationship from a place of strength and from that place of fear, of desperation, of I have to have a man or I have to have a relationship. And when you're approaching it from a place of strength, that's when you're ready to state exactly what you want and when you're ready to have that commitment.
And I think to receive, I think a lot of that includes appreciation. You know, I could hear a lot of men complain that she doesn't even say thank you for mail. So if God plans a date, he invites you and you go, I just always encourage women to express gratitude because they're not hearing that often. I encourage men small acts of kindness throughout the date, like complimenting a woman. On the other end, the woman needs to be ready to receive the compliment. So one thing I work on with women, it's conscious language. When someone gives you a compliment, don't come back with something that minimizes it. You know, oh, I look like this every day. No, we don't. We get dressed up for dates. You know, like I don't roll out of bed looking like this. And so I think, you know, we in our culture are taught to be humble to some extent, especially depending on where you grew up. And I think when a man compliments you, it's a great time to push back your shoulders and say, thank you so much. Like receive that with gratitude, because men are lit up by giving something to you, and you're lit up by receiving it. And part of that settling into that feminine energy, right?
Yeah, our feminine energy is just naturally more receptive, but I think that comes down to your self-worth. And so how do you work with women on how to improve their self-worth and be prepared to receive, basically? And and I don't mean that in just be prepared to receive in the sexual way, but be prepared to receive the nurturing, the love, the appreciation. What do you say to your women?
The biggest area we sort of tackle this is in sort of preparing for dating or dating mindset, to really figure out what are the old beliefs running the show. So I ask women about their past relationships, and I will have them sort of outline any patterns, anything that they're seeing, what they're struggling with, oftentimes I will find women have taken a long break from dating. And I'll say, you know, tell me about the break from dating. What was the reason? And when we talk about going out again, it's very different for women to talk about having a first date, and then also talking about having a third or fourth date, and then also talking about moving into a relationship. And so just sort of, you know, we're all evolving creatures. And so opening yourself up to love and putting that out there is a very strong declaration. And I think, you know, we want to say, oh, you know, we're commitment free, or I don't really want to be tied down. No, we all want love. We want to be adored. We want to be respected. We want to be loved by really amazing men who have a strong vision for their life and they have a strong purpose. Our job is to love. And so I think you have to allow that into your life. And I think dealing with the baggage from old relationships, especially marriages, you know, I talk to clients and like, that's what he said about you. But do you really believe that to be true? It's one of my favorite questions. I
love that question so much.
That, but
I love that.
Yeah, you've adopted this as something that's true. Is this really true? Sort of like, you know, Brene Brown and Katie Byron, like looking, is this really
flip
true?
that on its head. Yeah.
And they'll sort of say, well, maybe I'm not worthy because, you know, he left us for, I don't know, for whatever reason. But maybe it was a gift that he left you. I know it's really hard to think back, but look at who you've become in the process. You know, you would not have become this woman that you are today without having been given the opportunities to grow and expand that you have been given by God and the universe. We might not always like the assignments, but they're coming.
Exactly. When do you feel women are ready to date, or even men on that aspect, especially coming out of a long-term committed relationship, and especially coming out of a marriage? Because I think divorced men can be, if they learn from their experience, can be gold.
Yeah, agreed.
The key is the learning, though.
Right. So it's so funny because everybody has like this scientific explanation, and everybody in your church and your family and your friends, they all think you need to stay out of the dating game for X number of years. You know, there are a lot of programs that preach for the number of years you're married, you don't need to date for this many years. The truth is, everybody heals at a different time frame. We're not all identical. And so if you're willing to do some work on yourself, really get clear about what your desires are for dating, and if you're ready for another relationship, then that can really change the direct trajectory of your dating experiences. If you are sort of hesitant about it and you're not really confident about what you understand about the culture, or you're not confident in being in it, I think it's a good idea to reach out to somebody to get some additional support to transition back into it. Because I can tell you personally, I was married a decade. I was out of the dating scene from 19 to 33. And when I rolled out of the singles culture, there are not words to describe the experiences I had. They were all over the board because I had never dated as an adult. And I see a lot of women just utterly confused and frustrated, just like I was, because they don't understand the process. Here's the good news. You don't have to obey all those rules that someone has made up, right? You can make up your own rules because you have to be true to yourself in the end. And I think a lot of us, you can sort of lose sight of what you really want and who you really are in the process of a long-term marriage. And so I think taking time to figure out who you are and what you really want, instead of, I'm going to go date again. What's the real reason you think you're ready to date? Is it that you're lacking companionship? Is it that you're, just kind of curious about the dating scene? What expectations do you have? And how do you set those based on past experiences if you don't have any? So that's where knowledge comes in really handy, of the current dating culture, working with a coach. There's some amazing books out there that really can kind of teach you different ways to sort of reframe your dating experience. But I don't put a time frame on it. It's interesting. When people come to me, they're ready for relationships. And I had several clients who got engaged last year. And I have several clients who did true love waits, even on a second or third marriage. So they made a declaration that they were going to withhold the physical intimacy until marriage. And I supported that. And it did not hinder them in one way of finding an amazing person to marry. Because they found someone who had similar values, similar interests, and someone who shared a similar belief.
So what books would you recommend for women who are just getting back into the dating scenario? I mean, I know we're both big readers. So, yes. And I know a lot of the queens in my group are big readers. So I know they would love your book recommendations.
Yes. So I was trying to look and see. Dr. Ali Benazar, The Tao of Dating. You might not necessarily... It might not resonate the things they talk about Tao or, different cultures, but I think the topics he talks about in that book are really important for us to understand in current dating culture. There are some other really amazing books. It really sort of depends on where you are in your process. Because I took a break from dating for a while and I just read, just took in as much as I could. And I'll look at a couple of other books I had. Some of them maybe aren't appropriate to say out loud, but there's some pretty strong words used. Is it
the Gina Mama Gina's?
I love Mama Gina stuff. There's a few other ones as well. But I think you've got to approach it as, I want to learn something about myself. And I think if I had to do over again, I would have started with Mama Gina and some of those things that really would have helped me tap into my femininity sooner rather than later. Things that would have made me empowered with my body as opposed to ashamed or unsure of my body. Because post-divorce baby body looks different than pre-divorce baby body. And I think a lot of what we have now is some really amazing leaders in this area: femininity, sexuality. I mean, there are lots of great things. So I can provide a list, probably more appropriate for me to send that to you via typing. Just, we never know where this will end up. But I'll have to say that was one of my favorites. And then, of course, the default always is the 5 love languages.
Yes.
You need to know your love language, sister.
Yes, absolutely. I think on the topic of communication, of like, so many people, they just miss each other because we communicate in the language that we communicate in, not necessarily in that of our partner or our spouse or whomever we're dating. That was a big realization for me with my husband. He's a service-based, and I didn't realize that he loved when I did the dishes for him, like, because he does most of the cooking. Okay. And that was a very powerful realization in our marriage. And just the 5 love languages is the epitome of, I love that book so much. And
I think that, understanding your love language helps you in the dating realm. Most aware adults, single adults, also know what their love languages are, or they're willing to take some sort of screening online to find out what they are. The better you understand them, the thing I found most useful is once I understood what they were, I understood why a lot of things in my marriage didn't turn out the way they did and ended in divorce. But I also figured out how certain men drew me in closer and much faster emotionally than other men. Because my love language primary is words of affirmation. And so you keep on saying nice things, you're keeping in contact regularly, you're really building up that emotional intimacy and that bond. And that's one way I've noticed, some of the men I've dated for longer periods of time, that has been, they know how to do that well, very well. And so I think it's good if you've not taken a screening on, online, do that. But that book is the have to have for all singles. And there's a singles edition written.
And I think for married couples as well, even if you're in a relationship, figuring out what the love language is. And you touched on a really interesting topic, dating multiple men as a woman. I know with some of my clients who are physically intimate with a man that they're dating, they don't feel comfortable necessarily dating multiple men. What is your stance on dating multiple men and physical intimacy as a woman? Because as a receptive female energy, we have a different energy than men do.
Right. So, for women, in the beginning, a lot of my clients don't want to date more than one person. Like they're just getting out there post-divorce. They're just getting out there after a long relationship. So one's about all they can handle to get to know. And then through coaching, the benefit of that is week to week, we get to really strengthen whatever, those weaknesses are they need help with. Then they narrow down to that one person. A lot of people, myself included, I've dated multiple people, but was always very cautious of where I was investing physically with one person, only one person, because I find as women, we invest so heavily when we invest physically, with physical intimacy, that it's really hard then to divide our attention among 5 men, right? I mean, when you're just going on dates with those 5 men and, you've not established any exclusivity, you've not established where you are in the relationship, you've not had any actions to commemorate the relationship, or it's, substance. I think it's hard for us to divide. I think also as women, that also triggers insecurities in us, in our bodies. And so we start asking questions, doubting ourselves. I think the more you really embrace, this is who I am, this is what I want, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm comfortable with. Because I, as a woman, have gotten much more comfortable just sort of laying it out there. Because again, that trust factor comes in. And it's hard to trust more than one man at a time if you're dating 5. Like usually one's going to rise to the top and you're going to relate to him the best.
So when you're in the dating sphere as a woman, and there's that question of vulnerability and how much vulnerability is to the point of oversharing and vulnerability where you're just communicating your wants and your needs and your desires.
That's a good one. I think you ask yourself, what am I talking about? So different people feel exposed for different reasons. If you're talking about the reason your marriage failed, that can be really exposing to a lot of people. I've taught a lot of women how to reframe their divorce so that it's an empowering story when they share that with someone, that their evening is not crushed because they aren't putting their wound on the table.
It can be a bit of a downer talking about a divorce.
I know. So we sort of reframe that so that the conversation can continue to move. And there was something else that was coming to me. Ask me again. There was something else.
So what is the difference between sharing and being vulnerable and sharing and almost oversharing?
Okay. So vulnerability, when I think about that, I think about you creating a deeper connection with the person that you're seeing. And by giving verbal diarrhea, sharing everything, you may or may not create a deeper connection. And so I think you have to be mindful of where you are in the relationship. I think that, once you trust someone, you're certainly going to feel safer being more vulnerable. If you are vulnerable too early, then you're going to have an entire range of emotions then that are going to rise to the surface because, well, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe as women, what if I shouldn't have, because I did, whether it's something you shared, well, scared him off. You don't know that, but you made a decision to share it. Maybe next time, wait till a little bit later when you feel like you two are more connected and you can share something really vulnerable. There are a lot of really self-aware people. I'm sure in LA, I've been out with a few men who were really, coaches or in the psychology field, really self-aware. Go deep on the first date, we were there. But that can be a lot to take in for just about anybody. And so I think you'll know when the time is right when you open yourself up for love and you also open yourself up to receive love, there's sort of a give and take, and be mindful of the information that you're sharing and when you're sharing it, because you want your past to be something you share with them to strengthen your relationship. And you do that from a place of real feminine power.
So I love the fact that you just hone in on the feminine energy and the feminine power. Now, as like strong women, as strong, more like alpha women who like to have more control sometimes, how do we allow a man to lead in that traditional courtship way?
Some easy things are, and I tell women, when you're out on a date, walk up to the door and stand there. He'll either open it or he won't, right? So that's an invitation for him to step up to the plate. So is telling him you want a real date. Some other examples of that, I think men also value a level of assertiveness that's not translated as neediness. By that, I mean, I encourage women, because every woman I talk to has some man on her radar. It could be a coworker, it could be an old friend, it could be a Facebook friend. Most women have someone on their radar that they would love to go out with. And I tell my clients, what do you have to lose by telling this person, I would really love to have a date with you? Is that something you'd be interested in? It can be really scary and really daunting. I've had a lot of clients go through the motions and they've all thanked me on the other side, because without that extra push, they would have never embraced that. They would have always wondered, what if, prayed another 10 years for it to happen. But at some point, I think God and the universe know we need to get into action and be assertive. And so you can be in your feminine, and also say, look, I'd really like to spend some time getting to know you on a deeper level or outside of the friend circle. That's a really good way, I think, in which you assert a level of confidence to a man. And men will avoid rejection at all costs. And if you take rejection out of the equation totally, then you set yourself up, if he's interested, for really good success in making that date happen.
Awesome. I love that idea of just going for it and saying, this is what I want.
Yep.
And being assertive with it. Now, a common question that I've heard from my single clients and from even single girlfriends is, where are the men?
Where are the men?
Where are the men?
Men say, where are the women? So when I work with females, I say to them, do you look for single men everywhere you go? And they're like, no. If I ask a single man, do you look for women, single, married, otherwise, do you look for women everywhere you go? Yes. So the difference is, as women, we sort of compartmentalize our life. We're at the grocery store. I'm in my sweatpants. I'm not going to run into anybody here. But once you open yourself up to dating again, you're open for love, and you make a conscious effort to start paying attention everywhere you go to who you might meet. And I encourage my clients to talk to anybody you can talk to, because everybody has a sister or a cousin or a grandchild. You never know as you expand your regular environment who you're going to meet. So number one, single men are everywhere. I promise. Just open your eyes and start looking for them. Number two, online dating is super popular. That's an industry where things are always sort of moving and shaking, and different apps are popular at different times. Bumble is my personal favorite. That's usually the one I start my clients on, particularly females. And the other thing I tell my private clients is buy a ticket to an event where you share some sort of common interest or charity, or it's a fundraiser for something. And here's why. If you and I are single women and we buy a ticket to go to some sort of event, we're going to get dressed up, right? We went to the trouble to buy a ticket, maybe a friend or not a friend, but we had a reason to go to this event. And if we were single women, the goal would be more than likely to meet single men. So I tell single men to buy a ticket to go to these events because the women are dressed up. They're there to meet single men. There's already something to talk about because you're both in that space at that time for a reason. And it gives women an opportunity to really interact with high quality men who share similar interests, because the men are always watching the women. The best piece of advice I have for singles is stay off your phone when you're at an event. Yes. Don't be swiping on anything, grocery shopping, Amazon, Bumble, Tinder, whatever. Put it away. Watch the room around you. And if you're a single woman, look for the eye candy everywhere you go. And at this event, these people are captivated for a certain period of time. They're there in that space. Go talk to them. What's the worst thing that can happen? Because if you're assertive, you very well may get a date extender or an invitation for a date if he's interested. But if you sit in the corner swiping on your phone, he's not going to come over and risk rejection. So I tell my clients that's one of the best places to meet people. And it could be that you both, really enjoy the greenways of your city, whatever it is. There's going to be a common interest, and people will have money invested in it. So women are more likely to be dressed up. They're more likely to stay there for a period of time. And single women are out to meet single men most of the time. Men are out to meet women all the time.
That is so true. I love that you brought up the phone, though, because that is such a communication killer.
Yes.
My husband wrote an article, I forget where he wrote it, on dating, called Men Don't Text, They Call. And so when it comes to communication, and especially in the first stages of dating, how is the best way to communicate with, and how long is does the 3-day rule still apply for
Not in my world. Yeah. So I tell my men there's a 24-hour rule, and I've never met a woman who disagrees with me. If you are thinking about a woman, you will communicate with her at a minimum at least once in a 24-hour time period. And men will say, well, I'm really busy. I can't text all day. That's fine. Send her a text in the morning. Good morning. I'd love to talk to you on the phone tonight. I have a busy day ahead, but I'm thinking of you. Then call her at night. That is one thing that I teach men, is to pick up the phone and call her and have a conversation before your first date. Because that way you've talked, you've connected. And if you feel like there's no need for the date, you're going to know it then, right? You're both going to know it. But it's an interesting balance in the beginning, because women want to be pursued, right? Men, some want to play it really cool. But if he's totally into you, here's the thing. You're going to know it, because he's going to be communicating with you. And if that's your love language, you're going to be eating up all of that communication.
All those words of affirmation.
And so the texting, people are like, well, when does the woman start initiating? Here's the thing. As long as there's some sort of ongoing dialogue, he says good morning and you're sending a message back, or some sort of communication on a regular basis, you're going to know he's interested. And as women, mark a date in your calendar. I'm only available for men who pre-plan dates, meaning I can't throw everything up in the air at 6:00 to meet you at 7. That's not how I roll. So I think having your own life being in love with your own life and that being really interesting, intriguing to a man. Because then you're thinking of how bringing him into your life can really enhance it. And he's not worried about him becoming your life. And you're not worried about him becoming yours.
I love that. Laura, you are just preaching on a Sunday. It's a Friday, but it feels like Sunday. Like, that is so true about, and how, when you're in a relationship, do you coach men and women in maintaining that balance and yet also being able to maintain the intimacy and the communication? Because on top of your own work schedules and the relationship, if you add kids to that or other engagements, other things that you're engaged with, how do you maintain that solid foundation inside a committed relationship?
Yeah, inside a committed relationship, I think you need to understand the love languages. And by doing that, make sure she's fulfilled. Because then she will be much more inclined to meet your needs when you're meeting hers. And same thing with women, make sure his love language needs are met. Don't withhold just because you're not getting what you want. A queenly woman will explain, honey, I really love you and I appreciate all the things you're doing. I would like to have this experience with you. Or explain to them the things that are important. I think the bottom line is communication will either enhance and sustain a relationship or it will end a relationship. And I think we see this in marriages more time than we do maybe in relationships in the dating world. People kind of phase out in the dating world, right? They ghost. And then they're not interested. Don't worry about it. But in marriages, I think oftentimes we overlook those love languages because we're less concerned about fulfilling our spouses and more concerned about our lives, our daily lives. And so I think carving out some time to go on a date and to just be with your spouse is worth the babysitter fee. It's worth it to stay connected. And if you're meeting your spouse's needs and he's meeting yours, you're not going to have a need to explore your needs outside of that relationship.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to truly authentic communication, because I think, like we said, with dating and self-worth and expecting that sort of courtship in the relationship, sometimes women, I've found, they struggle with being authentic rather than catering to what they think the man that they're in a relationship with wants. And because of that comes from a place of scarcity and lack and fear that this is the best that I'm going to get.
Yeah.
So I have to hold on to this and kind of cater my communication to his needs, while meanwhile your needs are being depleted as a woman.
Yeah.
And so with the communication, it comes with truly being authentic with exactly what you want and owning that. And how do you help women? How would you advise women to go about that, having that not fearless, I mean, there's always a little bit of fear, but that courage to be able to state exactly what it is that they want during the dating period and during the relationship period, when especially there's more skin in the game?
Okay. I think here we get back with the power of the counteroffer as a former attorney. And so let's say your date proposes that you go here to eat. And you either don't like the food, you're allergic to the food, you prepare an alternative. You say, hey, I love these other 3 restaurants. Can we try these? I think in a marriage, you just got to keep that spark alive. And when you're dating, and I had a man I spoke to today on the phone. This is so interesting. The timing of this is divine. He said, I keep meeting these women and they tell me they love to hike and they love to fish and they love to go do X, Y, and Z. And when I confirm with them that's what we're going to do, they have no idea what I'm talking about. And I said, well, it sounds like you're getting a lot of women who are yes women. They're saying they love to hike. But when you plan to go on a hike, they bail. And so I think oftentimes we can sort of get into that, I'll just kind of blend in, go with the flow. If he wants to hike, I'll hike. No, girl, I'm not hiking. No, that's not me. I'm not pitching a tent. No. And I'm upfront about that. I don't want some man thinking I'm going to go spend the weekend with him by a campfire. Right? But that's me being assertive. My man might not always want to hear that when I say it. Look, I don't want to go camping with you. But you have to be transparent about those things at the beginning of the relationship. Because if you build a relationship based on interests that are unauthentic to you and they're not things you really enjoy, that glamour is going to wear off after a while, and you're going to be wanting to go do things by yourself. And so I think that's really kind of where I think as a society, yes, I love doing that. I love going to concerts. I love traveling. Traveling's great, but it's not number one on my list. We say things that, here's the key, we say things that we think will make us interesting. When in fact, there are like 5 other things we'd love to do instead of hop on a jet plane to Paris, right? So I think in a marriage, the same thing. I think just, come up with a counter offer. You've got to do something to sort of keep it alive. I tell my clients, what can you do to intrigue and sort of reinvigorate the spark in the relationship? What can you do to be interesting? She's going to drop off if you're not interesting or intriguing. She's not going to be impressed if she's not hearing from you. So those are kind of some things I think to consider. Instead of saying, yes, you love everything he does, when you really don't get caught, because at some point that's going to catch up with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to having separate interests as a couple, how do you manage, when one person wants to go sailing or do cooking classes and the other one is not so into it, gets seasick and not a big fan of cooking? And by that I mean me.
I think on those, I think that if you are a couple and you want to spend time together, unless it's something, that's really going to be a hardship on you, if it's something your spouse wants to try, I encourage you, or someone you're in a committed relationship with, try it. You might find that you love going to cooking class, but you have no interest in cooking a meal in your own kitchen. That's fine.
Absolutely.
But he enjoyed that. And by being in his space and doing something he enjoyed, here's the bonus of that. You get to see men sort of in their element. You get to watch them get lit up, whether it's a baseball, football, hockey game, doesn't matter. Go be in their space. That's one of the most resourceful things you can do in dating is whatever man says he loves, if it's something you're willing to try, like event wise, go with him and just watch how much he's lit up so you understand the importance of that in his life. Does that sort of resonate?
Oh yeah. No, I totally agree with that, because I think passion is sexy and contagious, even if it's passion for a sports game or a sports team. Like passion is attractive, and I think it enhances the attraction. When approaching, say for example, first dates, and for women, do you think clarity on intentions, like with having, for women to, because I just recently discussed this in within the group, is having clarity in what you want as a relationship. So what is the difference between being picky and choosy and knowing exactly what you want? And if one comes from a place of fear of actually being in a relationship, how do you navigate that field?
Okay. Making some notes here. So clarifying, so in my coaching I do with men and women, from the very beginning, I clarify, tell me about this ideal partner you really desire to attract. Because I think most of us who have been in the dating field for some period of time, we sort of know what we're looking for, right? I'm sure you can really knew what you were looking for when you met your husband, because you recognized him as an incredible man. And you knew that from the beginning. Am I right?
Yep. Actually, the night I met him, I was praying to travel more and love more and learn more about myself. And then I meet this guy and I'm like, oh, I thought I was going to be single and do all this.
Right.
Okay. Just go with the flow.
Yeah.
On that aspect.
So I think getting clear on your desires, not what he looks like. It's, some people call it a man menu. Mine is a little bit different. What traits and values and interests do you share? What are your values on whether or not you want children? That's a big question. For those of us between 20 and 50, which is a big age range. Do you want children? What do you deeply desire? The big question is, what does a fulfilling relationship feel like to experience? So for you, what does that mean? Would you be joyful? Would you, whatever the adjectives are, because I want to move people into that place of feeling so they can really envision a life with someone else. With this man menu that doesn't involve a lot of physical traits, because men come in the most unexpected packages. I
love that you call it a man menu. That's so fun.
So fun. ready. I call it the ideal client list. I mean, the ideal partner and the ideal client. But knowing kind of what you want. And I think clarity and knowing if you're ready for a relationship. Because when you're ready for a relationship and you communicate that fairly early on in the first couple of dates, you're not wasting time making a decision whether or not this is a good place to invest your time, energy, emotions, and body. And so get clear on what you desire, whether it's a relationship, and what that looks like for you. For some people, that's marriage. For some people, it's not. And so those are really important things to talk about, because some people really deeply, deeply desire to be married by, certain time period, or, have kids, have 3 kids. That's their goal. They may or may not be a good match for you based on that. And you can't expect to change someone's deep desires for someone else to change theirs for you, because why would you choose yours for them? You need to look for a better match, someone who really is on the same page with you. And then the fear, sort of navigating that fear of beginning the relationship. I think in those first few dates, you sort of can feel out, where are we going? Who is this man? And catch yourself in any old patterns of fight or flight you had. And if you feel yourself pulling back, ask why. What is your intuition telling you? And do you need to listen? Is it speaking louder? And this, I think, is where journaling and meditating and praying and all those things come in hand. Because as women, we so undervalue our intuition. And if we'd listen to it, especially in relationships, we wouldn't be wondering 6 months or a year down the road why we're still in this relationship, right? And so I think to some extent, trusting yourself is huge for women, really huge. Like knowing that there is someone out there for you and believing that to be true, not just some quote you saw somewhere, like believing he's out there. Because if you believe he's out there, you will find him. He's not hiding behind a tree. In fact, he's looking everywhere he goes for you. You just got to be looking for him. So I think it's just that fear. When you feel that fear start creep up, ask why. Why am I in fear? Is my intuition talking to me? Has he done something or said something that makes me question, trust or honesty or authenticity? Am I way out here in left field with my vulnerability and I don't feel like he's even coming any closer to where I am? Like I'm here ready for a committed relationship and he's still over here. Like we're not on the same, we're pacing at a different rate. I think all those things are important to consider. I think your intuition as women is something that's so powerful. You just cannot, especially if you're in your feminine, you're relaxed, you're receiving, you're open to love, you're going to figure out how this relationship unfolds when you ask for guidance.
I totally agree. So women should create a man menu. I think it's hysterical. I love it.
I call it an ideal checklist.
Or checklist.
Yeah.
I had one. I wrote it when I was 15. It had 50 things on it.
Oh, wow.
50. I really should have looked at it more often. But then when I met my husband 2 months later, I found this list that I created. I went through, I said, yep, still true. All 49 were still true for me. And he hit 49 out of the 49 that were still true for me.
Isn't that incredible? Like you put that out there to God and the universe and they delivered, maybe not in the time frame you were expecting or the package you were expecting, but you got them. And I think, clarity of desires keeps us from just wandering around aimlessly.
I totally agree.
We can narrow down the likelihood of a relationship much quicker when we're really focused on what we deeply desire. Because if they're not on board with that, if they're not in a place to have a relationship and you need to be rethinking, well, do I need to be out there exploring relationships with someone else instead of stuck here in this gray zone? Because I don't like it, but my fear is keeping me from leaving it. Yeah.
The gray zone is like just
like closes in on you.
Death of clarity. It's just absolute it's suffocating. When you're talking about clarity, being clear in going into a date, how do you coach your men and your women on what sort of clarity they're hoping to get out of it? Like what is the best goal going into a first date that a man and a woman should have?
I think with women are always reading body language, listening to words, watching actions. With men, I think they're oftentimes sort of taking in the date, taking in your ambience, your radiance, your, nervousness. They're reading some of that, maybe not to the extent you are as a woman. But I advise my clients to listen to music before they go, because I think as Americans and the way our culture sort of moves, we compartmentalize our lives all the time. And you've got to be able to transition sort of into date mode. And so music is something really powerful to help you do that, so that when you meet them, your intention is to, one, enjoy your evening. Two, you're really excited to be there to meet them because there's some anticipation that's built up. And three, you're there to really learn more about this person. It's not a job interview. It's not a wife interview on the first date. You're there to learn something. People are like, what do we talk about? I'm like, what do you want to know? Right? I mean, ask questions. There's some topics certainly I'd stay away from on a first date, but I think you've got to really use your communication skills and be who you are, not try to be the perfect first date. Because of the second date, they're going to find out that veneer is not exactly what they had expected. And so I think the more honest and true to yourself you are from the beginning, and the more questions you ask, the more knowledge you're going to have. And with all of that, especially with women, with all of that, we really can tap into, is this the right person for me? Yes, no, maybe, I need to explore this further.
So what are the best types of questions to ask on a date?
I mean, there's always the standard ones like, what do you enjoy doing for fun? And, what movies do you like to watch? And what's your favorite TV show? One thing I like to ask, and I tell my clients, especially with really sophisticated men who have had great careers, men in their pure masculine are really motivated by their vision and purpose in life. And for a lot of them, it's their career. And so by asking questions about what they do and listening to the words they say, you can tell if they're lit up by their career, if they're lit up by the life they've created, if they've got kids, if they talk about your kids. For women, we oftentimes sort of, have that yes mentality again on a date. I'm not going to share too much, but let him in your world to an extent where he can also sort of figure out if you two can carry on a conversation for more than 2 or 3 hours. And so consider it an opportunity to gather information. And be in the mindset, it's not just another date. It's an amazing evening out. And that's why I match the music to sort of shift you into that mood. So when you show up, it's a pleasure to be on a date with someone. Instead of, great, another first date. They're going to be able to read that all over you. But I think with a heart of gratitude, with the, that sexy feminine power you have to really, stretch yourself with confidence and be radiant and show up, he is going to get to experience you, who you are, instead of just the veneer of who you might otherwise be as a yes girl on a first date.
Be a queen, not a yes girl. Yes girls become no girls or become just disappointed girls down the road.
They fall off when the man wants to plan a camping trip or a hiking trip. So don't lie about those things. Just make sure the information you share is true, because the internet does exist, and some people do like to really gather all kinds of background info on the internet. I think you have to be careful with that. I think you have to give people an opportunity to be who they are on that date with you. And here's the other thing about our dating scene is so casual now, but I have some female friends who will just look up everything on Facebook. Well, he was out with another girl last weekend. Here's the thing. When you're a confident woman in your feminine, you're not worried about where he was a week ago. He asked you out on a date and he chose to have a date with you on Friday night. You're not in a committed relationship. It's a first or second date. Just be there and enjoy being in his presence. Give him that opportunity to experience who you are.
I love that.
And it can be a lot of fun.
I totally agree. I think my mentality back when I was single was just to go and learn some more about the person I was going to be spending time with for however long it was, whether it was, just that one date. And I realized, there are certain qualities that I didn't know that I didn't like.
Right.
So I think a great way to learn more about what you like is to date, but to keep it, keep your expectations of courtship, and to keep and to go in with the intention of just learning more about yourself, because perception is projection. So you're going to start to learn exactly what you don't like in the other person, or what you may not like within yourself that you might have to clear out before you're ready to meet that life partner. You touched on online dating, and so that's such an interesting arena. I never was a part of it. So with online dating, what really are the best practices, like your top 3 tips that you normally give to men to enhance to make them more attractive to women? Because I know a woman can put her profile up on an online dating site and she'll get 50 offers.
Right.
But a man, how do you coach them in making them more attractive to women? And so how would a woman know that this is going to be a catch, or this is going to be somebody who could be a very interesting prospect?
So with men, when I help them with their profiles, I go through photos. And so I always look for photos of them sort of in different settings, meaning professional, personal. I tell my male clients, take photos of you when you're really well dressed. Take photos of you when you're out traveling or doing some sort of exotic activity or taking a vacation, so they can get some diversity of you on a date. Only one photo with sunglasses, maybe one with a hat. Otherwise, ditch all of that, like disguise.
Yes.
Because the worst thing is being like unimpressed with who you see based on their photos. With men, I coach them to write their profiles to give women a sensory experience of being with them. By that, I mean, I have men describe, I love a woman who can wear blue jeans to the baseball game and wear a really great, gala gown to a fundraiser of my charity. Or we include things about sort of male dichotomy interests. So things that he really loves to do, like I really love to do this, but then I also love to do this. And even though I'm an accountant, I really hate being stuck behind the cubicle. Add some personality to it. Talk a little bit more, like let women in to the extent of they can imagine you're going to either be drinking fine wine or hiking, whatever image, create that so that a woman, it's almost palpable for a woman to feel like she's on a date with you, because she can see kind of who you are at your core. She can experience the things that you desire, what your interests are, not what your height is, and photos that show respect, as opposed to photos that show off even a great body. Like, you can decide if you're going to swipe on that one or not. I think it's always good to look for men who have something written, regardless of what it is, read through it. If you come across someone who's really cynical or has something negative to say, like, I'm only on here until I find my wife, that's probably not going to be a good match for your vibration unless you're sort of, in that same state in your life.
And even so, then, that doesn't sound like a very healthy state to mix in anyways.
I hear that a lot. I think the other thing is I want women to understand men better in their profile by both using photos and using words. And so oftentimes I make reference to childhood. I'll make reference, like I was the youngest of 4 boys. My brothers would describe me as brave or courageous. And what they value, I really value the fact that I'm, an active member of, whatever church, and include things so that, and church might not be the best example, but, I'm an active member of preserving, I don't know, whatever it is.
Wildlife or charity.
Right. For each client, it's different. And I write it because I want women to be like, okay, so he loves a woman in jeans, but he loves a woman in a ball gown. He really enjoys baseball games, but then he also really loves to, drink fine wine from France. He's an accountant, but his personality is like busting out of the seams, right? So getting all of that, because women then can sort of envision going on a date, because there are a lot of really incredible men, and they just don't know how to write a profile to really show off their best characteristics or traits. And I help them do that, and they begin attracting a much higher caliber match because women are intrigued by them.
Yeah.
And they're intrigued to learn more because of what's been written and the photos they've seen. And so you want to create that level of interest, even in your own profile as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Have a diverse photos, be very respectful. If you want a man to court you through traditional courtship, then you be that woman that he dates in a traditional way.
So how would a woman make herself more interesting? Like from a very powerful, strong standpoint, not the fear again of needing to do something for another man, like, I not being the yes woman, but from a very powerful standpoint, how would a woman make herself appear more interesting? And I think appearances actually being more interesting.
I'm going to take a deep breath on that one. See what's coming to me. I think men spend a lot of time looking at our photos. So they may match based on your photos initially, but before they communicate, most of them are going to read what you have to say. And so I always encourage women, put in there a couple different tidbits, maybe random facts about you or something that makes you interesting, something you enjoy doing, traveling to Africa or Habitat for Humanity, whatever it is, give them something they can talk to you about. That's the goal, is for them to communicate with you. Because if you're just like every other woman, then they're going to treat you like every other woman. Like, oh, hey, so-and-so. But if you put in your profile, I'm here to meet an amazing man. I look forward to having a family of my own. And I'm expecting real dates and looking forward to meeting incredible matches. Then they're going to ask you questions like, oh, I see that you're looking for a relationship. They're going to know from the beginning. Or, I see that you're really into traditional courtship. What's this real date thing? Like, I'd love to take you out. Tell me what it is. It gives you something to talk about. You're creating an opportunity, an invitation for them to learn more about you. And so, therefore, you have to share something of your own in the process.
Yeah, I love that approach comes from such a place of power. Of stating exactly what you want, like we said, and not being the yes woman, and truly embracing that. So creating that intrigue, do you think that that's something that can last, that interest and intrigues can sort of last throughout, from the dating aspect into a committed relationship? Or do you think that how do you constantly create that interest?
I think, and here's the easiest way to say it. When, men and women are interested in one another, they want to spend time getting to know each other every chance they can. They'll make that time. And so having your own life is the best piece of advice I can give men and women. When you have your own life, your own schedule, you're loving your own life, then a man is going to be happy to be a part of that. But when you make him the purpose of your life, or your life, and you're always wanting to spend time with him every waking moment, every weekend, he has no time for his friends or family or traveling, you're going to smother him, and your neediness is going to shine through. And so the best piece of advice I can give you, and I do this for all my clients, like, what's your social network look like? What do you do for fun? Where do you go with your friends? Don't give up those things when you're dating just because you're trying to get a date. Don't be available all the time. It's not a game. It's, you have a life that you love. And men really find that sexy, because then they're excited to be a part of it, right? You're not chasing them down because you have nothing better to do, which they can sense. You're inviting them to become part of your world. And I think even to commit a relationship, you start integrating friends and you start integrating interest. And there are times where you might, let your husband or boyfriend go off and do something that maybe you're not that into. And that's okay, because you trust him or her in doing that. You have to sort of give them you have to give men a little bit of space to do their thing, so that they can, for us, we talk out our problems. For most men, there's oftentimes an energetic release that they go and they do an activity, and it's really tranquil, and they get to not focus on their relationship. We come at a relationship based on love. That's what we deeply desire with men. Their main purpose in life is their vision and their goals. And so we just have to be mindful of that. Sort of two different main focuses, and women get frustrated when men aren't focusing on their relationship to the same level the women are. My question is, what's your life look like outside of that relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have one, we need to find one or create one, because that's what keeps a man coming back for more. He wants to be part of that. That's incredibly sexy.
Now, as very strong business women, there's a lot of business women in this group, and I hear a lot from clients who own their own businesses, from female entrepreneurs. I don't have time to date. He couldn't accommodate my schedule to the complete extent that the schedule, because it was so full. So how do we as women, like for me, that looks like, well, you may not be ready to date, perhaps. Or there's a fear of being in a relationship, of that suffocating, of that smothering your passion, your purpose, your own business vision for your life. Now, how would you coach a woman whose schedule was so packed that she doesn't know how to make space for a relationship?
So I start with, is that just an excuse? Like, what's really behind that? Is that an excuse that is a story you've been running over and over in your mind? Is that what you tell your aunt when she asks when you're going to have children? What's the reality of the situation? I think if we're all really honest, even the most busy, and I work with executives, single men and single women, they're all busy, but we find time for things we desire. And so then the next question is, do you desire to have a relationship and to create space in your life for someone else? If you have a deep desire, you will find the time. But if you don't, if it's not a priority, and I always ask men and women when they call, are you relationship ready? Sort of different way to phrase that. And then what are your top 5 priorities in your life? Because if relationships isn't on probably the top 1, 2, or 3, then is your dating life always going to get a back seat? Because you can't always make up the momentum you've been building in a relationship when you bail on it, or you end it, or you take a break, or people are going to move on. And so I think the big thing is just, really come back to your desires. We both know we all have the same amount of time, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and stop making excuses for yourself. If you don't want to date, that's okay. Not everybody's ready to date. I think you made a very valid point. Maybe it's time to kind of take a step back and look at that. What's the excuse? What's the old story? What's the reality of what you actually can add into your life? And I bet that you could find one night a week where you could go on dates if you deeply desire to make that time available to someone else. But that requires you open yourself up to dating and vulnerability.
And being receptive, and that ability to receive, exactly like we've discussed. Well, Laura, I know you have an amazing program for women who are interested in maybe pursuing a working relationship with you further. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about that coaching program that you have.
Sure. Thank you, Kimberly, for the opportunity. I've enjoyed this. It's been a lot of fun.
I've enjoyed this too. Yeah, I told you. I was like, it's going to be easy, super chill.
Totally. I have a program called Champagne, Cupcakes, and a Coaching Celebration. You can find that information on the website, www.nashvillelovelifestyle.com. I'll give Kimberly the exact link for that program. It's a 90-minute session, and I created sort of this short program for women specifically to really help them tap into that inner hot goddess. So before the holidays, I was thinking, what can I do for women so they can rock out this holiday season? And I thought, you know what? We all have that dress in our closet that we all want to wear. And we need a reason to celebrate. And so when you put that dress on, how does it make you feel? And so my coaching, I really focus on confidence. If you're preparing today, breaking down old beliefs, so you really could step into that inner hot goddess that's in you. Oftentimes our excuses and our fears keep her like stuffed in a box. But if we open her up and let her out, what a different woman you would be. It's not because you're becoming a different woman. It's because you're accepting part of who you are within. And you're allowing your desires to guide you, which is the big part. That you're actually listening to your intuition and your heart instead of your mind, and making love a priority. So that's a 90-minute program I have for women. It's a ton of fun, and it really just focuses on bringing out that sexiness that women have, that especially female business owners, we spend so much time on our masculine energy with systems and structures and everything else. We don't really give ourselves a chance to just relax and embrace our own awesomeness. And so my goal in this program is to bring that out.
And with cupcakes and champagne, like you can't go wrong with that. Like that's that's idyllic.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a super fun program. It's short because that's, one way I can work with women so they can kind of get a dose. And then if they want to talk about working with me on a long-term basis or a longer basis, we certainly can do that. But it's a great place to start.
Awesome, Laura. This has been so insightful. I have loved every single little tidbit of information. If I was a single woman, dang, I'd be going out there in my sexy dress. But instead, I'm going to be rocking it at home.
Yes.
Rocking my sexy dress at home with my man. So it's, I love the fact that you've mentioned programming and that your program, it goes deep into the programming of confidence that we have. And as like for me, how I coach with neurolinguistic programming, like we're taught from so many other sources and so many other belief systems, and it's been our choice to accept those. And now with cupcakes and champagne, you get to unpack those beliefs and bust out that sexy holiday dress. And I look forward to every woman who gets to take part in that program. I will send you all the links. Thank you all so much and Laura, please send me the links about your top books, because I know some of the women in here will really, really dive deep into those. And I was so happy to have you on. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your amazing feminine energy. You are truly a gift, and I look forward to seeing you skyrocket and help teach all these men traditional courtship.
I know.
Dang it, right?
It works. It's worked for men for decades, and all of a sudden we've sort of abandoned it. So I'm bringing back tradition with a spin on the modern digital era of dating and making it work for men so they attract a totally different type of woman who's ready for their love.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure to join you. Thank you.
Absolutely. You are totally welcome. And I welcome every single man who gets to date an amazing queen, because us queens and kings need to learn how to rule together.
Agreed.
And share it in love. So thank you again, and I will see you around. Remember, ladies, to make it rain and stay along the Queen's Way. I will see you next time. For more information about how to create a body, business, and life that rules, visit crownyourself.com.